Morning, I'm really excited to share with you guys, and I'm really excited to kick off our series for the next 2 months, which is called Anchored Stability for Our Church. So I should have a picture that comes on the screen, but it's going to be a really cool series. If you don't know, we're kind of going through our vision and values that we're thinking about going forward with as a church. And I sent you guys a big email with details. If you didn't get the email, or you don't have email, or you just want a paper copy, I have some paper copies on the back table if you want those as well after church, so feel free to grab them. But I'm really excited to go through this series and kind of look at how this can help us find an anchor in the storm and in the waves. We can't ever really promise stability because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. But I think we can have anchors that kind of help hold us stable in the waves and in the wind. And that's what I'm really hoping this can do for us. And to really kick this whole series off, I wanted to look at a concept and kind of look at this idea of anchors in our personal lives. So kind of look how all of us have our own personal anchors. So I think there's another picture. I don't know. I can't remember the pictures I put now. We'll see. Is that it? Aha, yeah, look at that. That looks pretty good. I did that. Just want to point that out. Yeah, I gotta put myself up sometimes. But no, I really want to unpack this because I think it's really important for us to know what anchors are and what I mean by this whole idea of anchors. So I'm going to unpack this for us, and then I'm going to kind of share some of moments in my own lives where these anchors have happened. And these anchors are really pivotal because I reckon they hold us together when we're going through unknown waters. When something happens that we're not quite ready for, we have these personal anchors, these moments with God that kind of hold us together. And I want to look at this. And today, I want to look in the Bible because there's stories full of these moments where people get these anchors from God. And we know the big moments like, the burning bush or Noah's Ark, like all these big moments, Jesus' miracles, some of the miracles in Acts. We know those big moments, those big anchor stories in the Bible. But today I want to look at one that I think really stands out to me. And it really helps me gather this idea of what an anchor is. And I want to look at a story found in Luke. And it's in Luke chapter 22, verses 47 to 51. So if you don't know, this story is found towards the end of the Gospel of Luke. And it's as Jesus is being arrested. It's just after he finished praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. After a time of such intense and emotional prayer that he sweated drops of blood. And the scientific name for it is, Hemotohydrosis. I think that was right. I'm going to say that was right. But basically, it's the science name for sweating blood. And this is what the definition of hemotohydrosis is. So I'll just read it with you guys. It's a rare condition in which an individual is capable of sweating blood. During active hemotohydrosis, capillaries that feed the sweat glands at hair follicles rupture to cause local bleeding, typically during extreme physical or emotional stress. So Jesus just had that happen. And I think too often we forget that while Jesus was fully God, he was still fully human as well. So that doesn't mean he was immune to emotional stress. It doesn't mean that didn't affect Jesus, because Jesus was human. And we read of this moment, a moment of emotional stress and deep emotional pain right before Jesus is going towards the cross. He has such stuff going on within him that when he's praying, he sweats blood. And then after that, he gets up and he gets done with his prayer and he goes over and he sees his mates, who he's already asked a couple times to, hey, stay awake and I got to pray some. I need you to stay awake. Can you stay awake and pray with me? And he went away once and he comes back and they're asleep. So he's gone and prayed again, so much so that he sweats blood. He comes back and they're asleep. And he wakes them up and he starts telling something. And as he's talking, we read of the story that I want to look at today. So if you want, I want you guys to open up your Bibles, if you have them, to Luke chapter 22, verses 47 to 51. And I just want to read this story together. I'm reading from the ESV version. So it might sound different to yours if you have a different translation, but it should come up on the screen. I'll have to make it bigger next time. I don't know if you guys can even see that. I'll make it bigger next time. But this is what it says. While he was still speaking, there came a crowd, and a man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He drew near to Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? And I want to stop there for a moment and just ask a question. Who here has ever been betrayed? Has anyone in here ever been betrayed? All right, has anyone in here ever been betrayed by one of your closest friends? Someone like in your inner circle. Has that ever happened to anyone in here? And I feel like this is what's happening in this moment. We often forget that Judas held a special place in Jesus' heart. I mean, this gentleman gave up everything to follow Jesus not that long ago. He was close with Jesus. He was in the inner circle with the 12. He gathered with him. He was so trusted and had such a special place in Jesus' heart that we believe, and Scripture will tell us, that he was the treasurer. So he was kind of like the treasurer for the disciples. He looked after their money, managed that stuff. And in this moment, after Jesus has already had the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays and he sweats blood and he finds his friends sleeping when he needs their help. And then he sees a close friend betraying him. Coming up to betray him with a kiss. And I know we've all probably had betrayal in our lives, but I just think for a moment, we need to stop and just sit and think how you would be feeling in that moment. Because Jesus was fully God, but he was also fully human. Which means he felt deep emotional pain. He wasn't immune to it. And he sees one of his beloved friends, one of his closest friends, betraying him. And I don't know how I would have responded in that moment. And I just want to keep reading. Let's read the rest of this story. So it should come up behind me, but it's verses 49 to 51. And this is what it says. And when those who were around him saw what would follow, they said, Lord, shall we strike with the sword? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said no more of this, and he touched his ear and healed him. And I want to stop the story there. We know the rest of the story, what goes on and how Jesus gets arrested. But I think that moment's really important. And I don't know about you, every time I read that story, the thing that sticks out to me is when Jesus says, no more of this. And he steps in and he brings healing. And to me, that's the best way to describe those personal anchor kind of moments that we have. And I should have another picture come up. But those personal anchor moments are the moments in our own lives where Jesus steps in and he says, no more of this. And he steps in with us. He brings his healing. He sits with us in our pain, and he comes and embraces us. And those kind of the moments are the moments that we look back on and that we hold on to when the waves are coming, or when we're in unknown water, or when poop hits the fan. And I just want to share one of my no more of this kind of moments. And probably the most important one, I guess, because it's the one that led me to do this whole Jesus thing and follow him. But I grew up in the States, if you can't notice from my accent. I'm not from around here. But yeah, so I grew up in the States. My parents went to a really strict non-denominational church. So when they divorced when I was 6, I think they both got letters saying they were going to go to hell for it. As a 6-year-old, I think that was when I was like, all right, well, stuff this God. He doesn't sound too nice. I don't want anything to do with it. So I just kind of didn't care about the Christian things. I went sometimes because in America, it's just kind of what you do. Everyone's Christian, but not really Christian. You just kind of go and occasionally tick the box, or you go to hang out at the cool youth group thing. So I would do that kind of thing, but I didn't really want anything to do with God. And I, was a kid that liked to have fun. I got into skateboarding, and I really liked that. I had older brothers, and I kind of just went along with the flow and hung out. By the age of 12, I was already drinking. I think a little while after that, I was into other things as well. And you fast forward a little bit, and when I'm 15, I'm a skateboarding kid. Little bit of a rebel, not too bad. I don't get up to too bad of mischief. Like I was friendly with the security guards and cops, because there were some really nice ones that would joke with us and kind of come watch us skateboard and then be like, you need to go in 20 minutes, so when they call me to come back, someone else doesn't come and get mad at you. And we'd be like, okay. And then we set a timer and keep skating for a little bit longer. And I remember at 15, I had a friend in that group who started going to church. He was an older friend of my brother's, because kind of growing up as a kid, and still to this day, my brothers and I kind of all share friends. It's really weird. We just have like this family network of really close friends, which is really awesome, and I'm really grateful for it. And one of my friends in that network became a Christian. And he was doing the whole God thing. And he invited me to church, because he was like, oh, I'll buy you pizza. So that's the only reason I went. And I was like, I'll get pizza afterwards, and I'll hang out with Sketch. Yes, this sounds like a good time. Let's do it. So I planned to do that. Little did I know during the week, something was going to happen that would completely make the moment going with him totally different. And what happened was, my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And cancer is something in the George family, it doesn't seem to like us Georges. Seems like it, I don't know, we have a target on our back with it or something. It just doesn't like us for some reason. And for me as a kid, I was 15, and I remember when my grandma passed away from cancer at the age of 6. And I don't remember much because I was a 6-year-old. But I kind of remember how we got to see her, and she was all right. And then next thing, she was in hospital. And then next thing, we couldn't see her because we just got told grandma was too sleepy. Now that I'm an adult, I know what really was going on is grandma was in so much pain. She just had the morphine up too high, and she didn't want us to see her like that. So as a 6-year-old, I got this memory of what happened to my grandma, and the first thing I do is that's going to happen to my dad. And I didn't want to lose my dad. So I walk around my neighborhood, and I'm kind of fuming. My dad's not home yet. My brother's there, but we're both kind of, me and my brothers, we're not handling the news great either, because no one likes to get that news. So while I'm walking around my neighborhood, I kind of come up with, all right, I think I'm just going to end everything. I've had enough of this life. Just seems a bit of rubbish. I don't want to do it. I don't want to see my dad die. I don't want to be a part of any of this. I've had enough. So I'm walking around thinking of ideas. Thinking of ways that, hey, there's a creek nearby, and we have black water moccasins, which are really deadly snakes in the States. And if they bite you, then I know I don't have long before I'd be dead, and no one could do anything to change it, and I could just hang out in the creek, and then it looks like an accident. I was thinking all these ideas in my head. And I kind of thought, walking around my neighborhood, all right, if I'm going to do all this, you know what? If there's a God person up there, I want to give him a piece of my mind. So here we go. Matt's going to give God a piece of his mind. So I looked up, walking in a neighborhood. I'm sure, if neighbors were looking out their window, they would have thought, what's this crazy kid doing? And I looked up, and I won't scream it here, but I basically screamed the loudest F word that I could. And told God to F off. And in that moment, I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything, I just felt a warmth. I felt someone come and step in and say, no more of this, and grab me and hold me like never before. And that warmth took over my whole body, every inch, and I didn't know what to do. Being a 15-year-old kid, I decided to go home and skateboard. So that's what I did. And then I went to church, and I felt the same warmth again, where Jesus had a moment, and he steps in again and says, no more of this. And that's when I decided to follow Jesus. And those are kind of the moments that I hold on to. I've had other moments like that. I can think of being a 19 19-year-old kid and having my girlfriend who's pregnant decide to move to Australia and thinking I've lost everything, and sitting there crying with an ultrasound picture where, like, you know, babies look like a little sea monkey. The early stage, a little sea monkey picture. And I'm bawling my eyes out thinking I've lost everything. I'm not going to get to see if I can make it work with this girl. I'm not going to get to be a dad. And I'm crying and bawling, and I feel that same warmth come in again and say, no more of this. And not only that, God surrounded people in my life in that moment. I had my dad who wouldn't go to sleep because he didn't want to leave me on my own. I had a friend who left a date early to come and hang out with me. I had another person that finished work to come and talk to me. God stepped in again and said, no more of this. I can think of when I came here and I first got here, and I was still 19, wasn't that much older. And I remember on my wedding day, beautiful day. And I remember before the wedding, I'm in a room getting ready at Kim's Nana and Pop. And a lot of the people in the home are strangers to me. I don't know them. I've known them for a month and a day because that's how long I've been in Australia. So, you know, that's probably how much I know him. And Kim's brother and family I know longer because, you know, we dated in high school. But I'm sitting in this room, and again, it just hits me that I can't do it. I'm a kid in Australia. I have no family here. I'm about to get married, and I just had to call my mom and dad and cry on the phone because they can't be here for it. I can't get up. I don't know what to do. And again, this warmth comes in and says, no more of this. Jesus steps in again into my world and says, no more of this. And I can think of these moments when I feel something, or God steps in maybe through a person or through a scripture or whatever it may be, and he says no more of this. But then I can think of moments where I don't hear anything. When I'm leaving the hospital as a 19-year-old kid, after being married for almost only 2 months with a little baby, having no job, not allowed to work yet in Australia, and thinking, what am I doing? Some crazy person has just let me and my wife walk out of the hospital with a kid. Like, we didn't have to sign paperwork. There's no one that's going to come check on us. It's just kind of like, take your kid, here you go. Like, what on God's earth? I don't know what I'm doing. And in those moments, I reflect on the moments where God steps in and says, no more of this. And I realize that God's with me in the moment. That he can be my anchor. He can hold me together in the unknown waters. And I rely on this all the time. I look back at these moments and hold on to him to hold me steady. And the moments where I mess up and say it's a very important moment in someone's life. They've been through something traumatic. And you have to say the best words. And you say the stupidest thing you've ever said. And you just say, hey, how you're going? Because it just comes off the tongue, and you say it to everyone, and you're like, I am an idiot. Why did I dare just say that? As I walk away, I got to hold on to those moments where God's my anchor. Knowing that God's with me and God's with that other person. In the moments when, you know, family life hits the fan, your kids get sick, whatever it is, leaning into God and knowing that God's with me. Knowing that he's there, holding on to that moment where Jesus stepped in for me and said, no more of this. And I want to invite the worship team back up to lead us in our last songs. But just before they do, I want us this week to kind of reflect on these personal moments that we all have in our lives. These personal anchor moments where Jesus steps in and says, no more of this. And that doesn't always mean your circumstances change. I would love to say that, you know, my circumstances changed radically when I was 15 and Jesus stepped in and said, no more of this. But it didn't. It was a journey. My dad's cancer got worse. It spread to different parts. He went from like a super high survival rate to a low. And then he had to do radiation treatment and different stuff. And through that, God brought healing. But it wasn't overnight. My situations didn't change. I'd love to say when I felt the warmth as a 19-year-old kid holding an ultrasound picture of my own born son, and I'm bawling, that the next minute I got a phone call from Kim's family saying, it's all right, Matt. we want you to come over. But that's not the case. That phone call didn't come till a month or two later. But what changed for me is that I knew that God was there, that Jesus was there, that he was holding my hand in those moments. And that was enough. I didn't know what the future was going to hold. I didn't know what's next, but I knew Jesus was there with me. And I think we all have those different anchor moments in our lives. And I don't know what it might be for you. Maybe it's a scripture or a friend just saying something at the right time or a gift coming at just the right time. I don't know. But I know we all have those moments. Those moments where Jesus steps in and says, no more of this. So as the worship team comes up, over the time of this series, we're going to be looking at our new church vision and values. And I really hope that these vision and values are going to anchor us as a church. So we have stability and we can move forward with God and what God is calling us to do as a church in the Highfields community. And if anything I shared today has impacted you, or if you need prayer for anything that, maybe not even be from today, me and Carol will be off to the side and you can come pray with one of us. And I just want to thank you guys so much for today. And I just want to close in prayer before I hand it over to the worship team. God, I thank you so much for who you are. I thank you for your love and for your grace and for your mercy. And I thank you for stepping in and saying no more of this. I thank you for being our own personal anchor in the moments when we don't know what's next, when we don't think we can get up, that you're there and you're with us. You give us the strength in that moment. And I just pray that as a church, you'll help us this week just reflect in those moments. With everything going on in the world, with all the different things happening, I just pray that we'll find our anchor in you. That you'll give us stability in the waves and the storms and the different things that will happen in the future. And I thank you so much for who you are. And I thank you for stepping in to all of our lives and saying no more of this over and over and over again. And you're